Usually when we think about a weapon, we picture something cold, heavy, maybe metallic.
Right, like a loaded revolver or, I don't know, a lead pipe.
Exactly. Or even just a jagged piece of glass. Something that does immediate, very visible physical damage.
Because you can see the threat it poses. Right. The cause and effect relationship is just incredibly primal.
Like you swing a pipe, a bone breaks.
Exactly. It's a very tangible exchange of force.
But then you encounter a scenario where the weapon isn't held in someone's hand at all. I mean, it's completely invisible.
It isn't even brought to the physical scene of the crime.
No, it's not. The weapon is just this microscopic seed of doubt planted deep inside the victim's own mind.
And once that psychological seed takes root, the victim essentially does all the destructive work themselves.
Which is terrifying to think about.
It really is. The amygdala takes over, flooding the body with stress hormones, and the person just slowly becomes their own executioner.
Right, they just dismantle their own sanity from the inside out.
Completely.
And that terrifying internal collapse is exactly what we are exploring today on this Chesterton Radio Deep Dive. We are broadcasting right here from Atchison, Kansas, and we are stepping fully into the theater of the mind today.
We are indeed.
We're dissecting this really masterful piece of vintage South African radio drama from the Tuesday Theater series.
Yeah, it's called Murder on the Mind, written and produced by Glenn Day.
And it takes this whole concept of the invisible psychological weapon and just, well, it pushes it to its absolute breaking point.
It really does. The landscape of classic radio is so often defined by these dense, atmospheric, physical worlds.
Oh, for sure. Haunted houses, foggy London streets.
Right, isolated manners, things like that. But Glenn Day, he just bypasses all of that entirely.
Yeah, he does.
The geography of the horror in this production isn't a physical location at all. It is literally just the rapidly deteriorating conscience of a single man.
So let's get into the premise for you guys listening. It kicks off in this really bustling, noisy, celebratory environment. It's a party.
A very loud party.
Very loud. And we're introduced to Stan Jarvis, who is this highly successful, swaggering crime reporter.
Swaggering is the perfect word for him.
Right. He is clearly at the top of his game, just holding court, completely insulated by his own ego and his status.
But then the atmosphere completely shatters.
Yeah, this guy named Steve Donaldson just steps out of the crowd and confronts him.
And Donaldson, he just carries this profound, unsettling gravity that instantly kills the jovial mood of the room.
It's palpable.
It is. He tells Jarvis he has just finished serving 15 years in a maximum security prison.
15 years.
Yeah, for being an accessory to this notorious, brutal crime known in the play as the Parker murders.
And here is the central hook of the entire narrative. Donaldson claims he's entirely innocent of those murders.
That's completely innocent.
And he doesn't blame the judge who sentenced him. He doesn't blame the jury or even the police who arrested him.
Nope. He points the finger squarely at Stan Jarvis.
He claims that Jarvis's relentless, sensationalized newspaper columns whipped the public into this rabid frenzy.
A total media circus.
Exactly. And that forced the police into a rushed conviction just to satisfy the bloodlust of the readers.
Jarvis's pen basically sent an innocent man to a cage for a decade and a half.
It's heavy stuff. And, when you have a character who has been wrongfully imprisoned for that long, standard narrative conventions dictate they want one of three things.
Right, like physical revenge, massive financial compensation, or, a public clearing of their name.
Right. But Donaldson explicitly rejects all of those. He tells Jarvis, right to his face, that he wants absolutely nothing of material value.
Nothing at all.
He just wants Jarvis to experience the exact same mental torture that he endured.
He literally tells him, I've just planted my first seeds in your mind.
Which gives you chills. And if you think about the modern equivalent of this tactic, it's fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
What Donaldson is doing is basically the 1970s analog version of a sophisticated internet doxer, or like a highly targeted cyberstalker.
The mechanics of the terror are virtually identical, really.
They are. Because a doxer doesn't use physical violence, right? They don't drive to your house, kick in your door, break your windows.
No, they just dismantle your psychological safety net.
Exactly. They send you a picture of your own front door. They tell you where your kids go to school.
Just letting you know that they're watching?
Yeah, that they are present, and there are absolutely no boundaries protecting you. It triggers this perpetual fight-or-flight loop in the brain.
And you can't sleep, you can't eat, you're jumping at shadows.
They ruin your life and drive you to the brink of madness without ever actually laying a finger on you.
And that fight-or-flight loop is just crucial to understand here.
Break that down for us.
Well, neurologically, when a human being feels they are under constant surveillance by a hostile entity, the brain's fear center,
The amygdala, right?
it's the amygdala, it hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which is the part responsible for logic and reasoning.
Do you just lose the ability to think rationally at all?
Completely. And Donaldson knows this. He has this infinite patience, forged in a tiny concrete cell over 15 years.
Wow, yeah.
And he pits that icy patience against Jarvis's frantic, high-speed, deadline-driven lifestyle.
It subverts the whole thriller genre so perfectly.
It really does, because it's not a traditional whodunit.
We know exactly who is terrorizing Jarvis from minute one. It's a who will break first kind of deal, a war of attrition.
Exactly. But that feeling of inescapable paranoia doesn't just come from the dialogue.
Right, it's baked right into the literal audio landscape of the production.
Yes. Glenn Day manipulates the acoustic space to physically trap the listener right alongside Jarvis.
Because the play begins in that crowded public party. We hear clinking glasses, background chatter, people talking over each other.
There's this auditory openness to it.
It feels safe because it's public. There are witnesses everywhere.
But even in that crowded room, Donaldson manages to isolate Jarvis conversationally.
And from there, the acoustic spaces just begin to shrink dramatically.
Oh, the funnel of it.
Yes. We move from the large party hall into a car. Jarvis and his companion Liz are driving home.
And the soundscape is suddenly confined to just the hum of an engine and the tight acoustics of a vehicle interior.
It's incredibly claustrophobic.
Very.
Then they arrive at his house. And, a home is supposed to be a sanctuary, right? A fortress against the outside world.
But the sound design makes it feel like a locked vault that Jarvis is trapped inside.
The doors click shut, the deadbolts slide, and the silence just begins to press in on him.
And eventually, the narrative forces him into his empty newspaper office late at night.
The geography of the play is literally a funnel, constantly forcing Jarvis into smaller, quieter, more isolated boxes.
And as those physical spaces shrink, the background noise completely drops away.
It's just dead silence.
In the office, yeah, nothing but heavy, heavy silence. And in audio production, silence is a deeply uncomfortable tool.
It really is.
When you strip away ambient noise, every single Foley effect.
A door handle turning.
Exactly. Or a chair squeaking, or a telephone ringing. It feels like a physical blow.
The audio cues are minimal, but because of that enforced silence, the impact is totally maximized.
Now, what anchors this tightening psychological noose is this brilliant layer of grounded reality.
Oh, we have to talk about this.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Commercials.
Yes, the commercials embedded directly into the broadcast.
And we aren't talking about a sponsor reading a script at the beginning and the end of the show, like a lot of American radio.
Right, this is 1970s South African radio. The advertisements are woven right into the fabric of the listening experience.
It's wild. You are plunged into this gritty, terrifying world of revenge, and suddenly you're listening to an advertisement for a rugged Peugeot 404.
Right. The announcer just confidently declares, each day passes as reliably as the last in a 404. Time stands still.
The irony of a voice promising that time stands still while Jarvis's time is rapidly, violently running out.
It's staggering.
But beyond the irony, these advertisements function as this fascinating cultural time capsule.
They really do. They construct a very specific mid-century masculine working-class culture.
You hear ads for Hunsa Pilsner, Dunhill, and Lexington cigarettes.
Marquez filter-tip cigarillos, Plascon Evans, double velvet paint, Viceroy Old Liquor Brandy, and Fisco coffee.
The Lexington cigarette ad is just hyper-masculine.
Oh, the jingle's amazing. It goes, for a flavor break when you've had your action, reach for smoking satisfaction. That, believe me, is Lexington time.
And it's two guys, Pete and Tom, casually chatting about staying with beer because it has 24% less carbohydrates.
It's this bizarre juxtaposition of rugged consumerism and just casual confidence.
And that aesthetic perfectly mirrors the persona Stan Jarvis has constructed for himself.
Oh, 100%. He lives in this hard-boiled reporter's world.
A world of stiff whiskeys poured from crystal decanters.
Of unfiltered cigarettes smoked over heavy typewriter keys.
Right. Of men who pride themselves on being tough, cynical, and utterly unflappable.
The commercials represent the societal armor that Jarvis relies on.
They act as a psychological buffer.
They really do. The ads reassure the listener, hey, the world is normal. The world is full of reliable cars, good brandy, and smooth cigars.
But the mundane comforts of consumerism are completely useless against the existential terror Donaldson is inflicting.
Right, Jarvis tries to lean on those crutches. He pours the whiskey, he lights the cigarette.
Yet he can't enjoy them.
No, his hands are shaking too much to even type.
Donaldson is just violently stripping away the armor of the modern world.
And that stripping process is paced so exquisitely through the use of the telephone.
The phone calls in this production are an absolute masterclass in building auditory paranoia.
Because the telephone, especially in the 1970s before caller ID or smartphones, it was an inherently intrusive device.
You have no idea who is on the other end of the line until you pick it up and surrender your attention to them.
So Jarvis is at home. He's poured his stiff drink. He's trying desperately to rationalize the encounter at the party to Liz.
He's trying to build his confidence back up.
Yeah, and then the phone rings. And the mechanical shrill of a 70s rotary phone just cuts through the silence.
He picks it up, and it's just Donaldson's voice.
Flat, calm, completely devoid of any aggressive emotion. He just says, "Hello, Jarvis. Sweet dreams."
And the lack of emotion is the terrifying part.
There are no grand theatrical threats.
No, Donaldson doesn't scream or yell. He invades Jarvis's private sanctum without ever physically crossing the threshold.
He proves that locked doors mean absolutely nothing.
I want you to imagine driving home late at night on a deserted road.
Okay.
You're already on edge. You look in your rearview mirror, and there are headlights hanging back about 50 yards.
Ugh, the worst feeling.
Right, so you slow down to let them pass.
But the car behind you slows down, too.
Exactly. You take a random turn into a residential neighborhood, the car behind you takes the turn.
That specific visceral drop in your stomach.
The realization that you are being hunted in plain sight.
Yes. That is the exact emotion Glenday sustains for the entire runtime of the play.
And sustaining that level of tension requires incredible vocal performances.
It really does. James Iran, playing Stan Jarvis, he carries a massive dramatic burden here.
He has to vocally illustrate a man's central nervous system collapsing in real time.
Which is not easy to do without sounding cheesy.
Not at all. When we first meet him, his voice is booming. He practically vibrates with arrogance.
Yeah, when Donaldson asks him if he's the crime reporter, Jarvis is defensive and dismissive.
Donaldson asks, "Is it your job to condemn criminals to death?" And Jarvis just scoffs at him. He is completely insulated by his own press clippings.
But Iran's vocal performance degrades with terrifying speed as the play goes on.
That booming baritone drops into this breathless, ragged, paranoid rasp.
You can physically hear the exhaustion creeping into his throat.
There's this pivotal scene in his office where he's talking to John, the young copy boy.
Oh, that scene is so good.
Jarvis is completely detached from reality at this point, just staring blankly at his desk. And John innocently asks if he needs a holiday.
Right, and Jarvis replies, "No, I think I need to retire. The ink in my blood is drying up."
The ink in my blood is drying up. I mean, it's a poetic line, but from a physiological perspective, it is a devastating admission of defeat.
How so?
Well, Jarvis is experiencing the late stages of cortisol poisoning from chronic stress.
Wow.
His body is literally shutting down his higher cognitive functions to prepare for a physical threat that never actually materializes.
So the ink represents his life force, basically.
Exactly. His entire identity as a writer and a thinker. The guilt and fear are physically manifesting as an existential drought.
He is being hollowed out from the inside.
And you have to contrast that frantic, ragged energy with Harold Freed's performance as Steve Donaldson.
Oh, Harold Freed is amazing in this. It is a terrifying study in vocal control.
He delivers every single line with this detached, clinical calm.
Like when he first confronts Jarvis at the party, he makes it a point to describe the physical toll of his imprisonment.
He says, 15 years in prison changes a man. It makes him look much older than he really is. The features become a little hard, a little sunken perhaps.
He is forcing Jarvis to look at the physical damage his reporting caused.
Donaldson's strategy here is incredibly sophisticated. He is essentially weaponizing empathy.
That is such an original thought. We normally view empathy as this purely positive trait.
Right. It's the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to feel what they feel.
It's the foundation of human connection.
But Donaldson inverts it. He uses empathy as a torture device.
He demands that Jarvis feel the exact, visceral, somatic horror of standing trial for a triple murder he didn't commit.
And the courtroom speech Donaldson delivers is the absolute centerpiece of this psychological warfare.
It is stunning. Donaldson corners him and says, "If you had stood trial, you would know what it's like. the palms of your hands sticky and uncomfortable, the sound of your heartbeat like a kettle drum in your ears.
He describes the entire courtroom staring at you, whispering, "He's got death, he's got death," in this slow, unbearable rhythmic chant.
Until, quote, you think your skull's gonna crack.
Donaldson is actively transferring his own traumatic somatic memory directly into Jarvis's nervous system.
And because Jarvis is a writer.
Exactly.
A man whose entire career is built on the ability to vividly imagine scenarios, craft narratives, and visualize details.
His brain is highly susceptible to this specific tactic.
Right, because a less imaginative man, perhaps, I don't know, a bricklayer or an accountant, might just brush Donaldson off as a lunatic and go to sleep.
But Jarvis's mind is a hyperactive engine.
He instantly, vividly visualizes exactly what Donaldson describes.
His own imagination becomes the instrument of his torture.
Donaldson just poured sugar straight into the gas tank of Jarvis's intellect.
That's a great way to put it.
And the supporting cast plays a really vital role in highlighting how isolated Jarvis is in this experience.
Valerie Miller Brown plays Liz, his companion.
And she functions very much as the audience surrogate here.
She is sitting in the passenger seat of that claustrophobic car, constantly checking the rearview mirror, when Jarvis barks at her to do so.
She is pouring the drinks to calm him down, and she is repeatedly pleading with him to take the most logical course of action.
She keeps asking, "Why don't you phone the police, Stan?"
Which is the exact question every listener is screaming at their radio.
Right. If a convicted felon is stalking you, you call the authorities.
Her presence really highlights Jarvis's profound irrationality.
Because every time she offers a perfectly sensible, protective solution, Jarvis just violently deflects it.
Which deepens the mystery at this point in the story. Why is a well-connected crime reporter, a man who literally drinks with police inspectors, so utterly terrified of asking them for help?
It doesn't make sense on the surface.
No, it doesn't. And then you have John, the office boy, played by Jack K.F.
John is this innocent, earnest kid who idolizes Jarvis.
He tells him, I don't think this paper would be the same without your column in it, sir.
He represents the public's view of Jarvis, the intrepid, heroic truth seeker.
But in a really tragic twist of narrative fate, this innocent, idolizing kid becomes the delivery mechanism for the final devastating blow to Jarvis's sanity.
You have Donaldson, the calculated antagonist operating in the shadows.
Right.
You have Jarvis, the deteriorating protagonist trapped in his own mind.
And these supporting characters who are completely oblivious to the deeply rooted psychological warfare happening right in front of them.
The isolation of Jarvis is just complete because he cannot explain his terror to the people standing right next to him.
To understand why he can't explain it, we really have to examine the history that set this whole nightmare in motion.
We have to look at the Parker murders.
Right. Jarvis finally breaks down and tells Liz the backstory of why Donaldson was sent to prison in the first place, and it is a genuinely chilling narrative all on its own.
It taps into the primal fear of rural isolation.
The Parkers were a wealthy, retired couple living in a cozy, isolated country cottage.
It is the classic setup for a home invasion thriller.
It really is. And the horror escalates slowly. It starts with bizarre, sadistic, practical jokes.
Anonymous letters arriving in the mail, that kind of thing.
Mysterious phone calls late at night with nothing but heavy breathing on the line.
The Parkers report it to the local police, of course.
And the harassment stops for a few weeks, which creates this false sense of security.
But then it starts up again, much more aggressively.
People knocking heavily on the doors at 2 a.m, stones being thrown through the glass windows.
And it escalates to the point where the Parkers' faithful little spaniel is murdered in the night.
Which is horrible.
It is. And in the psychology of true crime, animal cruelty is a massive red flag.
Because it's a stepping stone, right?
Exactly. Moving from property damage, like breaking windows, to the intimate violence of killing a family pet, it signals a dangerous, irreversible shift toward violence against humans.
The psychological barrier of taking a life has been breached.
It has.
And the terror culminates on a night where the fog rolling in off the moors is so thick you can't see your hand in front of your face.
The unseen tormentor finally strikes.
The old couple and the police officer who had been assigned to guard them are all brutally murdered. A triple homicide.
Scotland Yard investigates. They scour the countryside, but the trail goes completely cold.
The killer vanishes into the fog.
Until Stan Jarvis decides he isn't going to let the story die.
Right. Jarvis tells Liz, I kept that case alive in my column for 3 years. Every couple of months, I'd unearth the unsolved triple murder and splash it across the page.
And this brings up a massive question of journalistic ethics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Was Jarvis acting as a noble watchdog?
Was he keeping a cold case in the public consciousness to demand justice for victims who could no longer speak for themselves?
Or was he just creating a narrative to sell papers? It's an issue that is incredibly relevant today with the explosion of true crime media and amateur internet sleuths.
The media has a profound, almost terrifying ability to shape public perception and dictate the priorities of law enforcement.
By constantly splashing the image of the isolated cottage, the dead spaniel, and the murdered policeman across the front pages, Jarvis was deliberately stoking public outrage.
And public outrage acts as an immense pressure cooker on the justice system.
The police feel compelled to make an arrest, to find a culprit.
Not necessarily to serve justice, but simply to relieve the political pressure and prove to the taxpayers that they are competent.
And in that high-pressure environment, the burden of proof often drops.
Which brings us to Donaldson's perspective on Jarvis's crusade. It is entirely different from Jarvis's telling.
Donaldson says, "You kept at it, building false evidence, making people believe snippets of information which you sucked out of the air."
Donaldson was an innocent man who got swept up in this media-manufactured frenzy.
He was sentenced to 20 years, ended up serving 15, and was found guilty of being an accessory.
And why an accessory?
Because, as Donaldson points out, there wasn't enough hard physical evidence to hang him for the actual murders.
It was a compromise verdict. The jury knew the evidence was thin, but the public demanded a head on a pike.
So they put him away as an accomplice.
It forces you to grapple with the collateral damage of sensationalism.
Even if we assume Jarvis genuinely believed his own reporting at the time, the human cost of his reckless pursuit of a headline was a man's entire life.
15 years staring at a concrete wall, entirely because a reporter needed a compelling narrative to sell newspapers.
However, as the narrative brilliantly reveals, Jarvis did not believe his own reporting.
He was not a reckless crusader. He was something much worse.
All right, consider this your official spoiler warning.
The twist is coming.
We have set the stage, we have outlined the psychological stakes, and now we are going to dive straight into the twist, the truth, and the explosive climax of Murder on the Mind.
If you haven't listened to the original audio play yet and want to experience the revelation for yourself, hit pause, go listen, and come back.
For those staying with us, it is time to pull back the curtain on the great Stan Jarvis.
The revelation changes the context of every single interaction we've analyzed so far.
Stan Jarvis wasn't a sensationalist reporter who got carried away by ambition. He was entirely corrupt.
He was a mercenary.
In this shocking, honestly pathetic confession to Liz, Jarvis reveals that his entire pursuit of justice was a manufactured lie.
He wasn't acting out of humanitarian concern for the murdered Parkers at all.
No. He was actively being paid a massive, steady sum of money by a man named Richardson to keep the Parker case on the front pages.
And the motive behind that bribery is the core of the tragedy here.
Richardson wasn't paying Jarvis to uncover the truth.
No, he was paying him to obscure it.
The goal of the relentless columns was to create so much noise, so much public panic, that it would force the police to arrest a scapegoat.
And the scapegoat ended up being Steve Donaldson.
The entire operation was designed to protect the real killer.
And the real killer was a man named Frazier, who just happened to be Richardson's stepbrother.
Frazier committed the triple homicide, fled the country to France in 1965, and just lived a free, comfortable life while Steve Donaldson rotted in a cell for a decade and a half.
Jarvis knew exactly what he was doing.
He knew he was manipulating the public. He knew the evidence he was writing about was circumstantial garbage.
He knew he was framing an innocent man for cash.
"I needed it," Jarvis whimpers to Liz. "We were struggling then to build a home."
He attempts to justify destroying a man's life with financial desperation.
The cognitive dissonance required to ruin a life so you can buy nicer furniture is just staggering.
And the hollow nature of that excuse is painfully evident even to Jarvis as he says it.
When you have this piece of the puzzle, you look back at the earlier scenes, and the missed clues are glaringly obvious.
Oh, absolutely. Think back to the party.
When Donaldson first approached him and asked, "Is it your job to condemn criminals to death?"
A truly innocent, righteous reporter would have fired back, "I don't condemn them, the facts do."
Right, or "I just report the truth."
But Jarvis panics. His voice shakes.
He says, "I don't know you, and I don't like what I think you're implying."
He is instantly terrified because his subconscious knows exactly what he did.
He fears the bill has finally come due.
The most revealing clue, though, the absolute linchpin of his guilt, is his absolute refusal to call the police when the harassment starts.
Liz begs him to call them. It is the only logical step.
And Jarvis tells her, if I do call the police, that's just what he wants, and as soon as I do, he'll lay off.
The twisted logic of that statement is a massive red flag.
If a terrifying ex-convict is stalking you, you want him to lay off.
That is the entire goal of calling the police.
Jarvis doesn't want the police involved because he knows he is the one who belongs in a cell.
Right, if the police start digging into Steve Donaldson's complaints of harassment, they might reopen the Parker file.
They might look into Jarvis's bank accounts from 15 years ago.
They might track down Richardson.
Jarvis realizes that the police are a far greater threat to his freedom than Donaldson is.
He is trapped in a prison of his own making, caught between the ghost of the man he framed and the machinery of justice he corrupted.
And Donaldson understands this dynamic perfectly.
Donaldson's entire strategy relies on the fact that Jarvis's own guilt will keep him isolated from any official help.
Donaldson doesn't have to lock Jarvis in a room.
Jarvis's fear of exposure locks the door for him.
Which leads us to the masterstroke of the play.
The delivery of the letter.
Yes. Jarvis is in his office late at night. He is completely losing his grip on reality.
He is hallucinating, talking out loud to himself. His voice is completely wrecked.
John, the innocent office boy, walks in and says he brought the proofs back from the printing floor.
And Jarvis, lost in a paranoid frenzy, assumes it's a mock-up of tomorrow's front page exposing his crimes.
He starts ranting wildly about a photo of Stanley Jarvis, criminal, being printed for the world to see.
John is utterly confused by this outburst. He just hands Jarvis an envelope. He says, "A man gave it to me downstairs, sir."
It is a letter from Donaldson.
Jarvis, his hands are shaking too violently to even hold the paper, so he forces John to read it out loud.
John reads, Jarvis, your time is running out. Fraser was Richardson's stepbrother. Perhaps you didn't know that Richardson died in Versailles on the 14th of June, 1970. The last person to see him alive was Fraser.
The architectural collapse of Jarvis's entire life happens in that single sentence.
It is total devastation.
Jarvis assumed his secret was safe with Richardson, the man who paid the bribes.
They were co-conspirators, mutually assured of destruction if either talked.
But with Richardson dead, and Fraser, the actual murderer, being the last one to see him, Donaldson has somehow uncovered the entire conspiracy.
Through 15 years of relentless digging,
He knows about the money. He knows about the framing. He knows the identity of the real killer.
it proves to Jarvis that there is absolutely no escape.
The narrative he constructed to build his career, his reputation, and his comfortable home has been completely dismantled.
The microscopic seed of doubt Donaldson planted at the party has blossomed into a full-blown psychological nightmare that has consumed Jarvis's reality.
And the climax of the story is this explosive auditory experience that raises massive philosophical questions about culpability and justice.
After John finishes reading the letter, Jarvis completely breaks from reality.
John offers to get him a taxi or walk him home, but Jarvis refuses.
He mutters, I'll walk. Walk. That's what he said to me.
He stumbles out of the safety of the office and into the dark city streets.
The audio design here goes into absolute overdrive, simulating sensory overload.
We hear Jarvis wandering blindly, his footsteps echoing loudly on the pavement.
He is begging the empty air to be left alone, muttering his confession into the void. I didn't want to do it. He offered me money, and I needed that money badly.
And overlapping his frantic, pathetic babbling, we hear Donaldson's voice from the party,
Heavily reverberated.
echoing in Jarvis's head like a judge handing down a final sentence from on high.
It grows in your mind until you think your skull's gonna crack, the voice echoes.
You've never stood trial for murder, have you? Had you ever imagined yourself up there?
And then the kettle drum sound effect returns, the heartbeat.
It gets louder, faster, completely overwhelming the soundscape, drowning out Jarvis's pleas.
Jarvis is running now, blind with panic, fleeing from a sound only he can hear.
And then the screeching of heavy tires.
A horrific metallic crash.
Silence. Stan Jarvis is dead in the street.
In a moment of brilliant, incredibly dark thematic irony, the play cuts to Liz's apartment.
The phone rings. It's John, the office boy.
He tells Liz that Jarvis just stumbled blindly into traffic and was hit.
By what? A late-night newspaper delivery van?
The physical vehicle designed to distribute the lies and fabrications he built his life upon is the exact vehicle that ends his life.
It is the ultimate manifestation of thematic justice.
It is.
But wait, hold on. We're calling it thematic justice, but we need to examine the reality of what just happened.
Okay.
Isn't Steve Donaldson essentially a murderer here?
Well, he wasn't behind the wheel of the delivery van. He wasn't even on the street.
He wasn't driving the van, no. But he might as well have shoved Jarvis under the tires himself.
You think so?
By systematically, ruthlessly torturing Jarvis psychologically over 2 weeks, isolating him, depriving him of sleep, inducing a constant state of amygdala panic.
He pushed him to the point of a total nervous breakdown.
Right. He orchestrated that death. He knew Jarvis was fragile. He wound him up like a toy, broke his cognitive functions, and aimed him at moving traffic.
So you're saying it's stochastic terrorism?
This is a textbook case of stochastic terrorism. He created an environment where Jarvis's destruction was the only inevitable outcome.
That is a very modern lens to view it through, but look at the text of the play.
What do you mean?
Donaldson is remarkably restrained, especially for a man who had 15 years of his life stolen by another man's greed.
Restrained is a strong word.
We get a very specific scene where Donaldson is talking to an unnamed companion, presumably a fellow ex-convict or an associate from the criminal underworld.
Right, I remember that.
The companion is actively urging violence. He tells Donaldson, "If I was you, I'd make him suffer. I'd break him the way a swine like that deserves to be broken by force. I'd smash his face in."
And Donaldson completely rejects that path.
He does. He explicitly tells his associate, "I'm not the violent type. Never have been. It's not my way of working.
Someday I'll teach you how to pay back debt the right way."
You won't have to teach me because I won't be jailed for murder." Donaldson kept his hands perfectly clean.
But did he really?
He didn't threaten to kill Jarvis. He didn't lay a finger on him. He merely presented Jarvis with his own reflection.
But he weaponized that reflection. He knew exactly how toxic the guilt was, and he forced Jarvis to swallow it.
But whose fault is the toxicity of that guilt?
Well, Jarvis's, obviously.
Right. If Jarvis were truly an innocent man, if his newspaper columns had been written in good faith, however misguided, Donaldson's mind games would have had no effect.
That's a fair point. An innocent man would have called the police on day one.
Exactly. Jarvis's own guilt is what drove him in front of that van. Donaldson simply held up a mirror of conscience.
Jarvis looked deeply at his own soul, saw the monster he truly was, and was so utterly horrified by the reflection that his mind snapped.
The legal concept of indirect culpability is fascinating here, but morally, Jarvis executed himself.
From a narrative standpoint, I have to admit, it is incredibly satisfying.
It was flawlessly foreshadowed.
From their very first interaction at the party, Donaldson promised him, "I want you to experience some of the mental torture I experienced."
He never promised physical harm. He promised a mental collapse.
And he delivered precisely what he promised. The poetic irony of the news van seals the deal.
Jarvis lived by the sensational headline, and he died by the vehicle delivering it.
As we bring this analysis to a close, what's your final verdict on this one?
I highly recommend tracking down this production.
Yeah, same here.
If you appreciate tightly wound, claustrophobic, psychological cat-and-mouse games, Murder on the Mind is an absolute masterclass.
It is lean, the pacing is relentless, and the auditory techniques used to induce paranoia are still incredibly effective today.
I would recommend it specifically to anyone who loves narratives centered on journalistic corruption or psychological revenge thrillers.
Or stories where the human mind itself is the ultimate weapon.
Fans of classic film noir, hard-boiled mid-century pulp fiction, or modern psychological thrillers will find the DNA of those genres perfectly distilled in this audio play.
The play asks enduring questions about the power of the media, the symbiotic, often toxic relationship between the press and the police, and the incredibly heavy physical toll of an unquiet conscience.
The technology of broadcasting has changed, but the core human flaws it explores, greed, pride, and the terror of being found out, remain completely timeless.
They really do. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you guys listening with one final, unsettling thought to mull over.
Something the script leaves open-ended.
A question that Glenn Day's script deliberately leaves unanswered, but that lingers long after the final radio static fades.
We've spent this entire hour dissecting the collapse of Stan Jarvis's mind.
But what about Steve Donaldson's mind?
Donaldson achieved exactly what he set out to do.
He did. But think about the mechanics of his survival. Donaldson survived 15 agonizing years in a maximum security prison cell.
His entire existence, his reason for waking up every morning in that concrete box, was fueled by one single burning desire.
Vengeance against Stan Jarvis.
He gets out. He executes his psychological master plan with terrifying precision.
And Jarvis ends up dead in the street, mission accomplished.
But what happens to Donaldson tomorrow morning?
That is the ultimate tragedy of revenge.
When Donaldson wakes up tomorrow, the fire that kept him alive for 15 years is suddenly extinguished.
The invisible weapon has been fired, the microscopic seed has fully bloomed, destroyed its host, and died.
Is Donaldson finally free to go live a quiet life?
Or, without his singular focus of revenge to sustain him, will he realize that he is now just as hollow and empty as the man he destroyed?
When vengeance is your only source of psychological nourishment for a decade and a half, what do you consume when the plate is finally clean?
He may have survived the prison, but he might never survive his own freedom.
It's a haunting thought.
It really is. Thank you for joining us for another Chesterton Radio Deep Dive. We encourage you to seek out Murder on the Mind and experience the tension for yourself.
Tune in next time for more classic radio drama analysis.
Because as we've explored today, the most terrifying, most complex, and truly greatest stories are always best experienced through the ultimate canvas, the theater of the mind. Keep diving deep.